In today's video, me and SAT Scroll will be going over the top loadouts for tier 10 battleships and World of Warships. We separated into 4 categories, so let's get right into it and talk about the first category, which is the standard battleship tank build. Now, all the ships that are going to be listed are going to be in this category. We have the Yamato, the Aki, the Shikishima, the Rhode Island, Kremlin, Preussen, Kurfürst, Mecklenburg, Conqueror, St. Vincent, Thunderer, Republic, Burgoyne, Colombo, Loria, Sicilia, Thor, William, and the Irresistible. The Kurfürst and Sicilia will have a secondary build in the PvE section a little bit later on we'll talk about, but right now we're focusing on this one main build. Now this build is going to be as following. You're going to have main armor in the first slot to help reduce your guns being knocked out. Second is going to be damage control systems. This is going to make it where you take less of a fire chance and flooding chance. Third slot is going to be any systems, makes your guns more accurate. Fourth is going to be propulsion. You can also do steering gears depending upon your fancy. For slot 5, it's going to be concealment, makes your ship more stealthy, as well as making enemy shells less accurate on you. For slot 6 is going to be the main battery modification. This makes you have a faster reload with a slightly worse turret diverse. For the skills itself, we're going to be going over step by step so that as you're going down and training your commanders, as you're going down the tech tree lines, it's easier for you to be able to know which skills to pick. First is going to be gun feeder. This allows you to switch between AP and HE, or SAP and HE, or AP, whatever, faster. For the grease the gears, it gives you a 20% faster turret diverse. Very important to be able to turn your turrets to be able to shoot the enemy instead of waiting for it to turn. Next is going to be Adrenaline Rush. This is going to be your 6-point build. This allows you to make it where, say you're at half health, it makes it where the more damage you're taking, or whatever your HP is, and it lets you do more damage because you have a faster DPM. Next, it's going to be fire prevention. This is going to be your 10-point build. This makes it where you have a reduced fire chance as well as has reduced fires by 1. So normally it's 4 fires, but it goes down to 3. Next is going to be concealment. This reduces your concealment by 10%. This allows you to be stealthier, which allows you to, take less damage. Next is going to be emergency repair expert. This makes your damage control party and your heal stronger while giving you an extra one as well. So on ships like the Kremlin, where they have a limited number of damage control parties, it gives them an extra one. Now, why did we pick this build for the standard battleship tank build for all these ships SAT? Like, what was our reasoning behind it?
So standard tank build just works with, if you just have any doubts about battleship build, it works pretty well, because one of the main problems with battleships is their ability to take fires. Because they have a 60-second fire duration, they tend to take a lot more fire damage and just get burned down as a result. With the standard tank build, you're building into fire prevention, and fire prevention alone already cuts down a big chunk of that fire damage. But then you start adding in that extra heal, and your battleship survivability goes a lot farther. Adrenaline Rush is a staple because since you have a big HP pool, you can comfortably sit in the half HP area and get essentially a 10% DPM boost. For reference, the 6th slot, the one that boosts your gun reload by about 12%, you can get that at roughly 40% health. And even at that HP, you are not very easy to kill. So you'll get a huge benefit out of Adrenaline Rush. And then finally, the 3-point skill, improved repair party readiness. It's nice to get the extra repair, but you mainly take it because the cooldown, you decrease your cooldown the more you get shot at. And depending on what ships are targeting you, if you dodge a few airstrikes or a Minotaur is shooting at you, you can rack up potential damage super quickly, and that just helps you heal back even faster. So this is like a very safe, very tanky build that works for nearly every battleship. Like, even if the ones that we don't mention, it will still work fine, even if it's not most ideal. So it just lets the battleship do what a battleship does and tank the enemy team, while your big guns always remains a threat in deleting the enemy if they make one mistake.
All right, thank you for that, SAT. So let's move on to the US Battleship Tank Build. The second section we're talking about is going to be the US Battleship Tank Build. Now, this would be going for the American battleships only. So the Louisiana, the Montana, the Vermont, Ohio, Rhode Island, and Wisconsin. This particular build is essentially the same as the standard battleship build, but the main difference is going to be the modules. In the modules, it's going to be damage control party modification 1. This makes it where you have a 40% longer on your damage control party. All the American battleships have an extended damage control party already, so building into that more allows you to tank more fires by not being set on fire as much. So that's why you build into it. Second slot is going to be damage control systems. This reduces your fire and flooding chance. Now in slot 3, it's going to be the turret traverse. Now some people may want to take artillery plotting room instead, but the dispersion change is so tiny that it's not noticeable. So it's still better to do turret traverse, because in slot 6 is where you need to build the artillery plotting room to get that 11% more accurate. If you don't take this on your tier 10 battleships, you're a masochist. You just want to feel pain by not hitting your salvos. So you have to take this one in slot 6 no matter what. It's a must-have. In slot 4, you can do rudder ships is a must-have on the Montana and the Vermont, but on the other battleships like the Louisiana, the Ohio, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, I would definitely recommend propulsion. But on the Montana and Vermont, I would definitely recommend steering gears. Montana's steering rudder shift is really, really bad, so it requires it. And Vermont doesn't have the option to do propulsion because it has the really fast acceleration, so you'd have to take steering gears there. But that is for the modules. The skills are exactly the same as they were for the standard battleship tank build, so you can build them exactly the same as all the other standard battleships, but for the modules are different like we were saying before. Now, SAT score, why would you say this build is really good for the Americans?
So, slot 1, adding extra, so you start with a base of 20 seconds for your DCP, adding in another 8 seconds, and then adding in the skill on captain skill on top of it brings into a crazy 31 second, if I remember correctly. So you're essentially immune to fires for a very long time. The third slot is self-evident. You can't take the aiming systems there, so you either get traverse or extra range. US ballistics means there aren't hitting many shots at long range. You just require a ridiculous amount of lead. So the better dispersion you get from it is frankly just not worth it. So rudder shift is recommended just because the US rudders are a little bit slower. Montana has 23-second rudder, so you really need steering gears 22 seconds. So you need to fix it with steering gears. Otherwise, you're basically take forever to turn. Vermont has to do it because she has no other choice. The other battleships can take prop mod as well, but we just generally recommend rudder shift. But the most important thing is that 6th slot. The battleship accuracy, it's what gives the US battleships their signature high accuracy, like shell merging levels of dispersion. If you're not taking it, then your shots are going wildly all over the place because you don't have any other accuracy mod to slot in. So shots that would have normally killed enemies, they can easily get off scot-free because your guns just start going all over the place. So if you take about US battleship, you always take artillery plotting room. No exceptions.
All right, so let's move on to the heavy AP/sniper build. All right, so this section is about the heavy AP/sniper build section. So this is for those snipers that love sniping, sitting either mid to long range, using mostly AP to do that heavy damage. So this fits for the Bungo, the Slava, the St. Vincent, and the Incomparable. For the build itself, it's going to be essentially the same at the modules like the standard battleship build. So you have the armor in the first slot, damage control systems modification 1 in the second slot, aiming systems in the third, propulsion in the fourth, concealment in the fifth, and reload in the sixth. Now, where it really gets special is going to be here in the skills. The first skill is going to be preventative maintenance, so that you're less likely to get your guns taken out. And you don't need gun feeder on this due to the fact that you're going to be mostly throwing AP, so you're just going to ignore that. Next, we grease the gears, so that you're going to get a 20% turret traverse buff to make you turrets turn faster. And after that, it's then going to be adrenaline rush. This is going to be so that you The more damage you're taking, the higher your damage output's going to be. After that's going to be fire prevention, so you have less chances of taking fires and having the reduced number of fires on your ship. After that's going to be concealment. Concealment's really important on these ships, especially for the incomparable, because this whole gimmick is being stealthy. So not having that concealment on the ship is really painful, so you need to have concealment. After that is going to be the ERE, so that you're able to get a better DCP and a better heal. And for your final skill, it's going to be super heavy AP. This is what this whole skill, this whole build's about. It's about using those AP shells and doing that heavy damage, getting those death strikes. You get 7.5% buff to the AP shells. Now, it does come with a caveat. Even though you do take less damage from fires and flooding, you do get longer fire duration and flooding on your ship. So it does help encourage you to stay a little bit further away to help using your sniper abilities on these things. So this is why we recommend this build for the Bongo, Slava, St. Vincent, and Comparable. What are your thoughts on this build for these ships, SAT?
So as you'll notice, it's actually a pretty similar build to the previous standard tank build, except you're speccing into heavy AP. That gives these ships the extra punch that they can exploit with their higher accuracy. So since they hit very hard, they'll do a little bit more damage at the expense of their relatively fragile hulls. That you can kind of work around with good gameplay, but these ships are meant to just delete enemies in one shot. Like Bungo, for example, has a spotter plane. When you send it up, it increases your accuracy by 20%. So those shells, for at least a brief moment, become like snipers. And with that extra damage, that sometimes gives you just the extra punch you need to death strike the ship that otherwise could have limped away at 1 HP. So really good, a really specialized build, but amazing in the right, very specific ships.
Yep. Also, two ships that could also do this build as well. Like if you want a little bit harder of experience, the Yamato and the Brick Gaming itself, the Vermont, can also use this build as well. If you want a more high skill experience, those two ships with the heavy AP could do really well with them as well. So if you don't want to do like a American build or a standard build, the Yamato or the Vermont, you could also just take heavy AP with their builds as well, as more of like a high skill build if you want to do it that way. But let's move on to the secondary section, where we have a lot of secondary ships to go over. All right, so for the final section we're going over is going to be the secondary build section. So for you brawler lovers out there, this section is going to be for you. Now you can see we did put ships that were previously on the standard battleship build as well, which is the Kurfürst, the Preussen, and the Sicilia. These have their own secondary builds that we'd recommend for PvE, but for regular PvP matches, we would not recommend PvE for these three ships. But for PvE, these ships do very well with these secondary builds. So we'll be going over those builds as well as the Sibir, Schlieffens, and Libertad builds, because all these ships require different builds. So let's just hop right into it. For the Schlieffen, let's go over that one first. For the Schlieffen build, it's going to be like this. In the modules, you're going to have main armor in the first slot. Second is going to be the secondary. It's going to be the damage control systems, where you take less fires and less flooding chances. Some people may argue in the first slot to take the secondary armament to make your secondaries more tanky, but overall, with the fact that you are able to get your secondaries back after a certain amount of time, it's better to build the main armaments to help preserve your torpedoes and your main guns, since they do get knocked out a lot on this ship, so it's very important to keep them. Third slot is going to be the secondary battery modifications, since you are going to be building into secondaries, as well as rudder shift. Rudder shift is really good with a lot of the brawlers for you to be able to angle your ship, like be able to turn in or out, which allows you to dodge incoming shells and allows you to be a little bit more aggro. For slot number 5 is going to be concealment, to help make it where you take less damage with worse dispersion from the enemy, as well as having better concealment. For slot 6 is going to be the auxiliary armament modification 2. This makes it where you have faster reeling secondaries, which allows you to do more damage with them, which is your whole point of this thing. Now, overall, with these secondary builds in particular, you must always build into this signal right here as well. The Mike Yankee This is the only time we'd recommend you building into an actual signal. Like, it's a must-have. This makes it where you have 5% longer range on your secondaries with a 5% better reload and a 5% better dispersion. This is a must-have signal for all secondary ships, so take this on every single one of the secondary builds that you're doing. All right, so going on from there, let's talk about the build itself. Now, for the secondary build for the Schlieffen, you're gonna be doing Demolition Expert first. This gives you an extra percent chance for fires, very important for this ship. And then you're gonna have IFHE. The IFHE makes it where you do 25% more pen with your HE shells. This makes it where the smaller secondaries on the Schlieffen do 32 millimeters of pen, which is that magic sweet spot where you're able to do a lot of damage to destroyers, cruisers, battleships, you name it. It makes it where you have legit like DACA machines that will murder and farm everything. Very important. After that, it's going to be long range secondaries. This increases your range by 20%. And then after that, for your 10-point build, it's going to be concealment, which reduces your ship's survivability by 10%. After that, it's going to be the ERE. Since this ship does have a limited number of damage control parties, it's a must-have to get it for your 14-point build. Then for your 18-point build, you would do manual secondaries, so you get more accurate secondaries. And then finally, your final one's going to be Adrenaline Rush. This build utilizes the IFHE, as well as making it where your main focus is getting that damage output of the secondaries, as well as focusing more on having the damage control parties and heal. But overall, this is the Schlieffen build. Okay, so let's move on from the Schlieffen build and talk about the Libertad build. So the Libertad build is a little bit different than the Schlieffen build. So the first slot is going to be auxiliary armament modification. This makes it where your secondaries are way more tanky, and that's going to be the main part of this ship. Second is going to be damage control system modification 1, so reduce fire chance and flooding chance. Slot 3 is going to be secondaries. Slot 4 is going to be steering gears, which is your only option. Slot 5 is going to be concealment, and slot 6 is going to be secondary. So this build is very heavily built into secondaries. For the commander build, it's going to be one of the most unique you'll be seeing today. Preventative maintenance in the first slot to help make your secondaries more tanky. Slot 2 is going to be the anti-air defense and ASU expert. This makes it where if your anti-air is active at all, it gives you a 40% reload buff to your consumables like your heal and your damage control party, which makes you more tanky. Your next skill is going to be the long range secondary battery shells. This makes you have 20% longer secondary range. After that, it's going to be fire prevention, which gives you a reduced chance of fires by 10% and reduced number of fires from 4 to 3. After that, it's going to be the manual secondary battery aiming. Oh, sorry, no, it's going to be concealment, reduced by 10%. And then it's going to be the manual secondary battery. And then after that's going to be Adrenaline Rush. And that's going to be your 21-point build. All right, so let's move on to the Sibir. And then we'll move on to the Preussen, Kurfürst, and Sicilia. So for the Sibir, your main focus is going to be building into reducing how long fires last on you, as in having less chance of them being set on you by having the maximum number of damage control party. So you're going to be doing the first slot with that. Second is going to be reducing the fire chance of flooding. Third is going to be secondaries. Fourth is propulsion. Fifth is concealment. And sixth is reload for your guns, because Sibir does have the magical F key, which makes your guns way more accurate. So it's a must-have. For the build itself, it's going to be the preventive maintenance in the first slot, so you're able to have tank your secondaries. Next is going to be vigilance. This makes you see torpedoes a little bit further out and having more tank ability to torpedoes. So it gets your torpedo protection of 53%, which is one of the highest in the game. After that, it's going to be long range secondaries, so you get 20% longer secondary range. Then you're going to do fire prevention for your 10-point. After that, it's going to be ERE, which gives you a 10% longer heal and a 10% stronger damage control party. So this makes it from you having a minute 40 of a heal to a minute 50. After that's going to be manual secondary batteries, so this makes your secondaries more accurate. And then Adrenaline Rush is going to be your final skill for this build. All right, so the build that we're going over next is going to be the Preussen, Kurfürst, and Sicilia build. They're all going to be sharing the same build because they essentially going to have the same play style. So all these builds are going to be exactly the same, and so let's go over that. For the equipment, it's going to be main armor in the first slot. Second is damage control party. Third is secondaries. Fourth is steering gears. Fifth being concealment, and sixth being secondaries. Now, for Kurfürst in particular, build into the 406s. Do not do the 420s. Do you see that extra damage? It is not worth having a longer reload. So building the 406s and building 406s and having 420s, the pen is essentially the same. There isn't any really much of a difference, and so it's not worth it at all. So keep the 406s on the GK. Moving on to the commander build itself, it's going to be preventative maintenance in the first slot, turret diverse in the next. After that, it's going to be the long range secondaries, then fire prevention, then the ERE, then the manual secondaries, and then adrenaline rush. And again, this build is going to be for the Kurfürst, the Preussen, and the Sicilia for PvE only. We do not recommend these for PvP because taking these secondary builds out in PvP will be extremely painful. And I'll let SAT score end this on a short note.
So, as you can tell, all of the ships that we are recommending secondary builds are actually meant to have secondary builds. Libertad, Schlieffen, if you try to run a normal battleship build, you essentially won't get anything good out of it. The main guns are relatively weak to compensate for their strong secondaries, so it makes more sense to just go fully into her secondaries. And the main guns is just a nice secondary supplement. It's a nice supplement. Like, you won't be able to get into secondary range all the time, so the guns allow you to at least threaten enemy ships as you close in. Because they're so secondary focused, you have to build completely different compared to a standard battleship tank build. You want to get in close with your concealment, and then you amp up your secondary firepower with the range and the firepower increase skills. So that means that although they're not as strong outside of secondary range, once they make it in, oh boy, you can go to town and just start tearing apart ships left and right. They only differ slightly because Schlieffen needs the IFHE for some of her secondaries to hit the 32mm HE pen threshold. But other than that, everyone else doesn't need it. Libertad, for example, just puts everything into, takes a rather standard build and invests in the secondary accuracy. Sibir is a very interesting case because she has that special heal time to heal consumable, so she essentially doesn't have room to take concealment, so you have to find other ways to get in close. But once you do, Sibir just becomes a ridiculously tanky brawler that people will struggle to kill you before you eventually just run down the entire enemy team. As we said, Kurfürst secondaries is just better left to PvE. If you try to take it into randoms or ranked, people are just gonna focus you down because they know you're a big ship and you're not really all that tanky at the end of the day. And your firepower is not that good to really have good success with the secondaries, at least not before you die. But for PvE, it is perfect. Kurfürst will earn you a lot of credits, a lot of experience, and the secondaries really help her DPM when taking down the smaller ships as fast as possible. So, secondaries. Only build it on the secondary specific ships. But when you do, oh boy, they work very well once you get them into range.
Alright, thank you so much for the SAT score and for taking the time to help us with this video. But yep, if you guys learned anything in today's video, make sure to write in the comments down below. And what you guys thought of this video overall. Did you guys learn something? Did it help you guys out? Would you like this sort of thing for cruisers and destroyers as well? Let me know in the comments down below. And thank y'all for watching, and see you guys in the next video. Deuces.